Dragon Nest in 2021. But why? That is what you guys are thinking. And while streaming this, I saw people repeatedly continue to come into the stream and state the same thing. I thought this game was dead. No, it definitely isn't. Sure, I may have had more people watching the stream than the game actually has active players, but that is not the fault of the game. That is the fault of the team behind it. Now, welcome back to another episode of Is It Worth Playing, where we sift through every MMORPG available right now in an attempt to find the best MMORPG in 2021. Today, we are taking a look at what is arguably one of the best free-to-play anime MMORPGs currently available, Dragon Nest. Because, well, it deserves an honest look in 2021. And you know what else deserves an honest look? That subscribe button. Yeah, you should totally be subscribed if you're interested in new MMO news like this every day, general MMO discussions, MMO giveaways, and if you feel like I deserve it, go ahead, drop a like and a comment on the video. It's a huge help for the YouTube algorithm. Now, let me start this off by stating that Dragon Nest is over a decade old. It has long since passed its expiration date, yet players still remain determined to play it for as long as it remains online. And even after having released well over a decade ago, players still cling to the opinion that not only does this game feature some of the best action combat in an MMO, but also has some of the best PvP. So let's start this off by talking about what kind of game this even is. Now, I've covered many hub MMOs before, PSO2, Dungeon Fighter Online, Soul Worker, Vindictus, yet Dragon Nest is a different title altogether. On the one hand, it is first and foremost a hub MMO. There are a plethora of different hubs situated around the world. Each hub has its own selection of instances connected to it, with their own set of level appropriate dungeons to run. Yet the instances are more open than what you typically find in a hub MMO, meaning that you have more to explore, you have additional players to meet. It feels much more like a traditional MMO in essence than its competition. Yet the core of the game is centralized around running dungeons. There isn't really any purpose to exploring. Thankfully, dungeons are, well, there are quite a few of them, although occasionally they do reuse a lot of assets, so you're left with the feeling that you're not really making much in terms of progression until you reach a new map with new dungeons, new monsters, and new bosses. As there are a sizable number of them, they're varied quite significantly. Each map is made up of several different instances that all share aesthetic similarities with one another and are typically unlocked via the story. The story plays a pivotal role in Dragon Nest. The game is absolutely filled with lore, admittedly too much even for me. While I read through some of it and I did watch all the cutscenes, I often found myself absolutely overwhelmed and subsequently skipping parts of it. Although I do want to note, holy crap, some of the cutscenes that are available within the game are beyond buggy, even over a decade after the game is launched. Case in point.
Not at all. You're the one who's getting sloppy.
Okay, the subtitles and the things they're saying completely different. This is some Dragon Ball Z shit right here.
How tragic to say goodbye after such a short walk.
Are they just, have their character models just not loaded? This is... Oh, he's got half a body! Seriously, this is what I had to deal with while watching them. Jokes aside, the narrative isn't bad. The voice acting is atrocious, but the story itself, easily passable. But if that's all the game had going for it, I dare say it wouldn't have had nearly the same impact that it ultimately ended up having in the genre. People regale me with stories of their hard-earned victories over their enemies in PvP, even to this day. Admittedly, and I am actually kind of disappointed to admit this, I never got to participate in the PvP, either recently or when Dragon Nest was a relevant title. I tried queuing for PvP in the past, but it just never popped. I don't know if this is due to the active PvP players being a fraction of what is already a very small, very limited player base, or that they just don't participate in whatever it was that I was queuing for. Either way, while I never got to participate in PvP, what I did get to experience was the combat, which, as I noted back at the beginning of all of this, many players rate as being one of the best combat systems in the entire game. And I do hate to disappoint you all here, but, and don't get me wrong, for an anime MMO, the combat was pretty good. But in terms of quality, comparing this to other action MMOs like Terra, like PSO2 New Genesis, like Blade and Soul, or Vindictus, or Black Desert Online, it just does not feel remotely as good. These are games that have truly taken action combat in the MMO genre to a whole nother level. Sure, for an MMO made back over a decade ago, the combat is pretty damn good, but making the bold claim that it is still capable of competing with these gargantuan titans? No, the combat looks good, it feels good. Abilities look good without seeming overly flashy, animations fit, and they don't feel over exaggerated like in some MMOs, and the combat flows well. Everything fits together perfectly. I might even say that this is better than most other anime titles out there. One thing I did not like though, was that at lower levels you are given a ring that gives you 50,000 attack power, meaning that I spent what? 10-12 hours moving through the game with absolutely no challenge at all. I leveled all the way to level 70 before encountering an enemy or boss that I couldn't one-shot. Sure, I could two-shot them, but seeing them survive a hit for the first time in days playing the game was a thrilling experience. I almost had to do a double take as I couldn't believe that something survived a hit from me. I'm aware that you're not forced to equip items like this, and the higher in level that you continue to get, the more difficult the enemies become, but by the time I finished streaming the game, I was, what, like leveled 87, 88, and the bosses still continued to take only a few hits to successfully down. And that was what, like after 15 hours of playing or more? How overpowered they make you feel is ridiculous, but at the same time, I completely understand why they chose this route. The low level experience is atrocious, and the players have no real way of either speeding this up or the developers don't have a way of overhauling it to make it relevant. So instead, they try and power you through it as quickly as possible. And while that is definitely one way of handling it, I do believe this is killing the low-level experience. People love challenge in their games. The absence of challenge whatsoever is damaging to overall player retention. I mean, who wants to stick around to see if the game gets any better? Dragon Nest has great action combat for an anime MMORPG. There are plenty of unique hubs to explore with a variety of different instances to run. The game has a compelling narrative. It also looks absolutely adorable. Sure, it shows its age, but man, it still has that old school charm to it. Yet, unfortunately, at times there feels like there is far too much clutter in the story that could easily be removed without any real consequence. The voice acting is atrocious, like really bad. As it is a hub MMO, it likely won't appeal to everyone. You spend most of your time grinding instance content, either solo or in a group, but there is little open world content to participate in. The leveling process is far too fast in the early levels, resulting in a boring leveling experience that really should be overhauled. The player base is almost empty and the game receives very little in terms of updates. Ultimately, Dragon Nest is a pretty unique MMORPG. A lot of the game takes place within instance areas, having you grind away endlessly, yet the gameplay makes it a much more enjoyable experience. The leveling can get old very fast, and I feel like I barely scratched the surface of the game in the 15 to 20 hours that I spent casually playing through it. This is a very grindy game, but I feel as though at the end of the day, the grind might well be worth the time invested, especially if this is a type of game that you genuinely enjoy.
Someday soon, I'm gonna make it.